What does it feel like to be back here?
Not that much has changed. There's also the week that the Unabomber threatened to blow up LAX.
A lot going on.
Cross movies. We had a plan.
By the way, I want to say that the plan says World War III on it, which is very appropriate. It's a quiet day in downtown LA, but 25 years ago, behind me, one of the greatest shootouts in movie history was filmed. I'm talking, of course, about Heat, Michael Mann's epic 1995 drama that at last pitted two of our greatest actors, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, against each other in a violent, hypnotic game of cat and mouse. Vincent Hanna and Neil McCauley are flip sides of the same coin, obsessive and brilliant cops and crooks who live and die by a code. They get the job done and take care of their crew at any and all costs. Heat may be the ultimate crime film, and it was all set here in the sprawling backdrop of Los Angeles. Let's see where it happened and go to the map. Heat shows virtually every side of LA in its dozens of practical locations, from chop shops to beautiful homes in the Hollywood Hills. But its first big action set piece takes place on Venice Boulevard, right underneath the Santa Monica Freeway. Over at the loading docks of the Los Angeles Harbor, the cops think they're watching the crooks until we realize it's the other way around. If you want to see where Neil McCauley's crew recruits Dennis Haysbert's Breeden to be their driver, just take a trip to Burbank and visit the oldest existing Bob's Big Boy restaurant. Unfortunately, Kate Mandolini in Beverly Hills, the site of one of the most iconic scenes in film history, the tense sit-down between Pacino and De Niro, is no more. You can, however, still see where Heat's show-stopping bank heist-turned-shootout was filmed. Most of the action spanned Fifth Street in downtown LA, where I'm meeting up with Heat's writer and director, Michael Mann. So this is the scene of the crime, as it were, Michael. Yeah. This is where one of the most epic bank heist-turned-shootouts was ever staged. What does it feel like to be back here?
Not that much has changed.
That's the bank that they're coming out of. It wasn't really. The interior bank was a different part of downtown. But if that's the bank they're coming out of, there were these geometric-shaped statues and a very orderly row of palm trees. And it had the sense of deliverance from all the threat.
Yes.
And you felt that all they have to do is walk those 30, 40 feet to get into this car park right here.
Right. This is where Breeden's car is.
This is where Breeden's car is. And the camera works very intimate behind Tom Sizemore's head.
He thinks he's home free.
He thinks he's home free. He's got a maid. He's still agitated. He jumps in the back seat. Unbeknownst to them, Hannah's racing in with his detectives.
Yes.
And is going to park up the street.
Yep.
At the same time, in the other direction, Hannah's ordered up all these black and whites, and I wanted a T-junction up there so that they could block it.
Yes.
And I wanted Neil McCauley and Chris to have to go uphill to it. So they're all one block away, and there's already an array of police cars up there. So basically, McCauley is getting, assaulted from Hannah's group from one side, and he's got a roadblock on the other. So Horowitz has his smile on his face. He's getting in the car. He looks across the street and he spots Wes Studi playing Casales and Michael T. Williamson playing Drucker.
Yes.
And what's interesting about it is it happens the way it would happen if they were really trained for Horowitz. There's no hesitation.
No, he goes right into attack mode.
He goes right into fire. In the shootout, he just fires right away. Faced with an ambush, they attack, they assault the police. And they assault them in the classical fashion where De Niro gets out, Val gets out. One takes cover, lays down rounds, the other advances. Then he stops it, he takes cover and lays down rounds, and then the other guy advances.
Yeah, there's nothing haphazard. They know what the plan is going to be.
They know exactly what they're doing, and they know their tactics are very advanced. In fact, Val Kilmer, when he does that reload, that's still used in Fort Bragg for Special Forces training, for saying if you can't really reload
as good as Chris did in the film.
There's no cuts as good as Val Kilmer does, you're in the long army.
So talk to me a little bit about the preparation for something like this. As I understand it, you couldn't rehearse here for days on end. How did you prepare for a sequence like this with the actors?
What we did is we had a plan for this.
By the way, I want to say that the plan says World War III on it, which is very appropriate. Because that's what it feels like, basically.
There's various pieces of street furniture, various boxes, poles, obstacles. Some we put there, some were there. And what we did is we duplicated those on the LA County Sheriff's shooting ranges.
Right, because you couldn't necessarily have access to this for days on end, so that's where you restaged.
Well, you also
basically
couldn't fire live rounds in the middle of downtown Los Angeles.
Never a good idea.
It's not a good idea.
Does this stack up among the most complex sequences you've shot in your career?
No.
This isn't even a hard one. What?
This was very, very precise. Yes,
Yeah.
No, it was. Listen, these things aren't hard.
It looks hard on paper to me.
They're challenging, and that makes them great. They're very exciting to do.
Any other director, if I asked that question, they'd be like, yes, this was the ultimate scene in my career. You're like, yeah, maybe top 10 most difficult scenes.
We shot at some interesting locations.
Well, in a classic film, this is a classic sequence, but there's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's go inside and chat, shall we?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
For any Heat fan, this is the Holy Grail is sitting right in front of me. This is like...
It's not the Holy Grail. It's 1/5 of the Holy Grail.
Oh my God.
There's 5 more like this.
For anybody that knows your work and how much research you do, I know this is the tip of the iceberg for Heat. Yeah. But talk to me about where this began for you. Where did Heat begin?
It began with a guy named Charlie Adamson, who was a close friend, who was a figure in a criminal intelligence unit in the Chicago PD, which is like robbery homicide division in the LAPD. Right. It's a major crime special unit. Charlie told me the story about Neil McCauley. He killed the real Neil McCauley in 1963 in Chicago. And there was this wonderful duality about how he related to Neil McCauley. At one and the same time, he really admired him. He respected him. He thought, this guy's a great thief. He was terrific. I mean, he had planning, he had discipline. One thing was out of place that shouldn't be there. He would walk away. At the same time, Chuck's attitude was that he'd blow him out of his socks at the drop of a hat.
I mean, it's part of why one of the many things that makes Heat so special is you have essentially two protagonists that the audience is fully invested in. You can look at it from both perspectives, and you're in love with both of these characters and rooting in some ways for both of these characters.
Well, you're rooting specifically for both of the characters, but that was the major challenge, hence the attraction for me was, can I immerse the audience 100% into an empathetic relationship with Neil McCauley, where you're rooting for him, and one at the same time with Vincent Hanna, with Al Pacino, where you're rooting for him, which puts you into kind of a fugue state, if it worked, a counterpoint heading towards the end, which becomes a real dialectic. So once I knew that ending, I would work backwards.
We have to talk about the casting of this film, because the ensemble is remarkable, and then of course at the core of it you have these two behemoths of actors that had never shared the screen. They'd been in a film together but never shared the screen. Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Was it De Niro and Pacino or bust? Were there backups? Could you only have done it with those two? How did it happen?
Never got that far. We, Art Linson, who's the producer, and I went after Al, went after Bob. Both said yes.
Yeah.
A really in-depth conversation with both of them, and that was it.
Talk to me a little bit about directing De Niro and Pacino, because from what I understand, they come at it in different ways. And what strikes me in the film, De Niro is this like Zen master in a way, very calm and cool. And Pacino, Vincent, is subject to these explosive outbursts, whether it's to draw out an informant or intimidate somebody. Were those on the page, or did Al surprise you in scenes?
It's all on the page, all in the design. The design of the character is to have counterpoint.
Yeah.
And real oppositional counterpoint, very much like a dialectics. There's a thesis and antithesis, which means that the parts that they have in common are identical, and that's their awareness. Both of these men are the only two people in the fictional universe of the film who author their fate. Right. They are aware. They are not just walking through life. And then what's different about them is opposition is exactly 180 degrees. Yeah. So the temperament of Pacino, his methodology as a detective on a quest to capture people for information, is intuitive. It's psychological. He manipulates his own subconscious the way an actor would. De Niro is absolutely rigid. He's somewhat sociopathic. And he's disciplined, and he's zen, and he has a formula that he invented about how to succeed in professional crime and then get out of here and go live a real life in Fiji as he imagines it from postcards.
A few scenes we have to talk about in particular. Yeah. So the iconic coffee shop scene, this meeting that is decades in the making. We've never seen Pacino and De Niro share a scene. What was your approach to shooting the scene that you know is going to be so anticipated?
Well, two things. There are a lot of complaints that was the only scene between them.
Right.
You know, but that's the strength.
That's what makes it
That's
so
what
powerful.
makes it. That's the only one, you know, and it's right at the nexus. It's when De Niro has discovered who's on him, i.e. Hannah, Al Pacino, and then Pacino also realizes that he's been made, and that's seen by the docs, where they've been lured someplace, and then he just feels it on the back of his neck that we're being observed, we just got made. So right at the point in the middle, the two of them meet, and what I wanted was I wanted to expand and enlarge character, face, movement, performance by reducing and restricting everything else all the way around them. So I particularly picked a black and white restaurant. This is monochromatic as I can get.
Yeah.
Shot as simply and purely as I could conceive how to shoot it, with two cameras, each over each shoulders, being shot simultaneously. We had a third camera that was doing a profile, but I never used it.
You've never used it, right?
Never used it, because every time I tried to use it, or experimented with using it, you dropped you out of the scene. You had such an intense emotional connection being face to face with these guys.
Yes. Do you have a favorite moment in that scene? Because it's the dialogue, it's also the pauses, they're sizing each other up. What's your favorite moment?
When it gets so personal that they start talking about their dreams. That just kills me.
I have one where I'm drowning, and I gotta wake myself up and stop breathing while I'll die in my sleep.
The authenticity of everything that they do as thieves and detectives.
Yeah.
It's mined from real people and real lives, and it's from kind of a lot of research. So it has an authenticity to it that I think makes these characters really believable. We believe them.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about it.
I don't know if you could shoot the finale the way you did back in '95 today at LAX. You shot at LAX, actual airplanes going over. How complex was it to shoot that final sequence?
It not only was it not that complex, it was also the week that the Unabomber threatened to blow up LAX.
Wow.
So
a lot going on.
So the cross movies. Yeah. And we were still able to shoot out there on the apron, and we were very nice to the people in the tower. He just had access in '95. You could do that. Yeah.
Was it always scripted that essentially it ends, one of the final shots is them obviously clasping hands together? Was that always?
Oh, always. I mean, this is the ultimate point of the whole dialectic. Neil McCauley has the luxury of dying in connection with and communion with the other person he's the closest with on Earth, who also at one and the same time happens to be the person who shot him.
They understand each other. They're the two that understand each other.
So that conjunction was the whole idea.
You're also going back to these characters now. You've co-written a novel, correct?
I had so much knowledge of the lives of these characters. What Christopher Hollis was doing when he was 11. What orphanage Neil McCauley might have been in. It's kind of standard where you build up a really deep biography of your characters before the film begins, and so consequently the anticipated novel is both a sequel and a prequel.
So could you imagine turning these backstories into another film or TV series, or is it going to stay on the page?
That's the idea. It's best as a novel first, but then absolutely the ambition is to to turn that into a movie. A movie or something,
I pity the actor that has to play Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna after.
I've got some ideas. I'm not going to tell you who they are.
Oh, wow. There's a tease. When he came out 25 years ago, it was acclaimed. But if anything, the reverence for it, I feel like, has grown over the years. How does that make you feel that the legacy, if anything, expands year by year as new audiences find it?
I find it interesting. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the movie I made. I know how ambitious it was, and it was not like anything I ever had done before, and I couldn't find anything else quite like that.
Yeah. And you must also hear from cops and their adversaries. I mean, have you heard from what they get out of that? Get out of the film, the authenticity of the film.
Pretty similar, yeah. And thieves,
Exactly.
and then it was imitated. There was a bank robbery in North Hollywood bank robbery, because they held up a bank and they were heavily armed with automatic weapons and a lot of body armor, and then they stood and they shot it out with the police until they were killed. They said it was poorly imitated because the whole point of attacking the police is you assault an ambush to get out, because every 10 seconds the police are capable of bringing in more and more assets, eventually overwhelm you. And then some detectives I know in the robbery homicide division told me that they found a half-inch of heat that was just about worn out. So they had been looking at it. They didn't have to look at heat. What I was using was classical special forces responses to ambushes. So anybody who wanted to do any kind of research would find the same.
If anybody's watching Heat today,
tactics,
don't use it as a template. That's not the idea. Well, this film is a stone cold classic. You created something exceptional.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you for dissecting the film a little bit with me today, sir.
My pleasure.